Just fucking do it. Subscribe now. If you don't pull the trigger, you just go back to listening to. I don't know why you can't. I don't want. We used to ask. I don't ask anymore. When the first podcast shit started up, I don't know, 10 years ago or something like that. I think it was Bruce the Whipple that told me about it, and he sent me the links, and I listened to one, and then I listened to maybe 4 or 5 minutes of another one, and then 2 or 3 minutes of another one, and what are they saying? Why do people listen to these guys? I couldn't connect the dots because it obviously wasn't true. It was instantaneously, I knew it wasn't true, what they were saying. In fact, to the detriment of the kids, it was not only not true, it made the job harder. If somebody had to come in and try to fix the deal, it was almost impossible to fix the deal based on the information. Now, podcasts started, for those of you old enough to remember the first ones, they were all free. And they should have been free because they weren't worth a shit. But that's not why they were free. That was part of the marketing gimmick to suck them into the vortex. So then you'd buy, whatever the next product was. And now there's a gazillion podcasts. I don't know how many, but there's a whole bunch of them. And 1 or 2 or 3 exceptions, they're all worthless. And if it were that they didn't charge until they really were given some information that was worthwhile, then they charge. But that's not the thing. Actually, to the extent that I've listened to a few of them for off and on for a couple of years now, I want to see if this guy's improved his shit any, and they haven't. There's been a degradation of material being put out now because now there's a plethora. I mean, you've got to compete to get podcast audience or eyeballs, or hearing. And what they're competing for, the information is just downright bogus. There used to be a guy doing infomercials back in the 80s, and he used to dress up in an Uncle Sam Wants You with a big hat, Uncle Sam, and the uniform, a flag, American flag, whatever. And he had a deal where you could take advantage legally of some of the loopholes in federal law vis-a-vis government contracts. And he was on the air 2, 3, 4 years, and then somebody finally woke up, and they shut him down. And he got a piece of your deal. If you followed his model, he got a piece of your deal. Of course, he was depending on you being honest and paying him because he doesn't know you're around. That's the most honest, and those weren't podcasts; those were infomercials. But it's the most honest podcast I've ever seen. He actually gave value, how to do something legally and loophole in the government. Then a guy in the UK came out with one. And he only wanted to get paid based on your honesty to pay him what you made, a portion. I haven't seen one like that again, and I don't think there is any like that again because almost all the information you get on those are horseshit. Horseshit. And the pig fucker. Now, the irony of it, it was during the seminar, the next day, on the 26th day, or actually that day, he closed the deal for 12 million pounds. Now, you saw him. He went straight from the call with us to the gal. Doesn't know what he's doing. I tell the story, nobody wants to believe me. Josh had done a couple of deals in his 4th or 5th month after the seminar. After he repositioned himself into home health, and he called his cousin from Goldman Sachs or JP Morgan and asked him to go through a balance sheet with him, and he didn't know the difference between debt and equity. Some of you in this room don't know the difference. But I used to point that out back in the 90s and ridicule you, humiliate you, bring you to your emotional knees, right close to death, as you asked earlier. I don't do that now. And it's not because I told you. I have inelastic demand. There's no level that I could raise this to that I can still get the people. Because that shows the level of desperation. But let's go back to the pig fucker. I mean, he wasn't as they used to say, he's not an Oxford Don. In other words, he's not a professor at Oxford. Some of you are a little better, and some of you are a little worse, vis-a-vis your communication skills. If you're genuine with yourself, that's hard to be, but if you're honest with yourself. But he just went out and did it. And he's few and far between. Since then, the record from first deal to second deal is 7 days. 7 days. 2 different people. The record from second deal is by that guy who was 66 who came here, blah, blah, blah. And, and he's now 70 or something. And he did a deal in 7 days. And the key to getting the deals done is seller finance. And when we actually go through the presentations and before we used to role play, you'd be the seller and you'd be the buyer. Okay? And then we'd have the rest of the class critique. And then I'd critique it correctly. Because even though you're listening to them both, I don't know what maybe we've got some sort of drugs in the candy bars or some shit. But anyway, but what you remembered was if one of the guys that was the buyer or the seller, didn't matter which, had slightly better communication skills, you remember what he said, not what the other guy said, not what the critiquer said. And my critique was so not off the wall, but far flung from the other critique. So now I do both sides, the buying, the selling, and the critique, and I don't let you talk at all. Because we hear what we want to hear. And let's just say, I'll make it a simple example. We've got 2 medical doctors, okay? Both of which, let's just say that they're both kind of the same kind of doc. So you realize what kind of education they went through, or the lack thereof, and you know more what they don't know than the rest of the class, okay? I don't think doctors know shit, myself. And I was going to perform this year brain surgery in Panama. Me. Had the people lined up, had the insurance lined up, with a certified board surgeon from the United States. And he said, you'll probably get it right the 3rd time. I'm up for it. See, I didn't ask what happened at the first 2, because I don't give a fuck. You'd still be spreadsheeting it. You'd be reading medical books till they came out your ass. The pig fucker just did it. He doesn't know what he's doing. And then the audience is listening to him. Is there anybody there from England? Everybody says no. Then the first fucking moron that asks the question, I'm Jaime Chinaman and I'm from London. How is this possible? Because you are as thick as 2 short planks. You're trying to pretend you all 3-piece suits. God bless you. I should have cut a deal with Brooks Brothers. I tried to buy Brooks Brothers when they went into liquidation a year and a half ago. I should have made a deal with them. I should have made a deal with Rolls. I should have made a deal with Bentley. I should have made a deal with Ferrari, to name 3 that a lot of you kids have bought those cars based on I wonder what. Questions, comments about the pig fucker? Yes, sir.
I think we can stop the seminar right here, sir. That says it all.
Well, you're not the first person that said that. Actually, we've had people say, remember that slide that said, after the LOI, blah, blah, blah. Okay. That is the seminar. That and the backward bicycle. But it's easier to talk about. You got to rewire. It's a motherfucker to rewire yourself. And again, like Costa Grazos told me almost 5 decades ago now, Mr. Peña, don't waste time on things you can't change. And I asked him for an example, and he said, your in-laws. It became crystal clear to me. Not very many people are changing their in-laws, or their in-laws. It's really their in-laws' opinion of you. But you got to pull the trigger. And the more you pull the trigger, the better you get. And it's not about going out, we're going to teach you how to sit in the boardroom. Okay? Like a gunfighter, you sit with the sun at your back, the windows at your back. We go through all the nuances. I don't know if he followed him or he didn't follow him, but he knew he was going to close the bitch. I talked to one of you about you brought it up, my 94.6% closing ratio in sales. It's because of the high expectations. My federally indicted criminal sales manager lawyer said, a young man like you, Peña, should close every motherfucker that comes to the door. Well, every motherfucker comes to the door 100%, right? So I did my damnedest. I came pretty close, 94.6. And I shed tears for the 5.4 that got away. I literally shed tears. And my sales staff, which went between 380 and 410 or 420, as a group, they closed more than 50% of their prospects. Unheard of in sales. But I led by example. I closed almost 100. And I said, well, you're only a half of one of my balls, so you ought to be able to close at least 50. And it worked. And we give you all these, not tips, but we give you, I don't know what the fuck they're called. But they're based in reality. Now, we haven't had anybody even remotely close to closing 100% since I did it. We have had some sales programs that closed 40, 50%, just based on those stories. They're not stories, they're truth. But who are you comparing yourself to? And one of the reasons that the seminar here at the castle is so overwhelmingly effective is not just because of the content, but yesterday's dreams are today's realities. I showed you the slide, Skibo Estate, Mr. Carnegie's, and mine. That's not a coincidence. It's not a coincidence. And when you get around people like that don't know, I can't remember the last time I lost. You can't remember the last time you won. Do you realize they talk about dual universes and that shit, I don't know if that's true or not. But I mean, it's like how Barron Trump was raised. Unless you've been in that environment. I wasn't raised that way, but we raised 3 kids like that and didn't work out like I thought it would, because man plans and God laughs, but it worked out pretty fucking well. And I think I wasn't hard enough on my kids. My kids say, Dad, when Kelly turned 16, I bought her a car. Okay. When Kelly's best friend turned 16, her father bought her a jet plane. Just like you saw Gabriel. It was a small, yes, sir, thank you. I used to, my first plane was a Citation. We used to call it an Imajet, because it imitated being a jet because the birds flew faster than we did. And then my next one was a Lear. My next one was a Fokker. I liked it just because I could say we're flying a Fokker anyway. And then our next was a Saberliner. Saberliner was the first jet that you could stand up like a man. And in the oil business, I used to use the G2, G3 of my partners that, didn't charge me, just, when I was going around doing our joint business. And they said, Danny, you got to get a goddamn plane that you can stand up like a goddamn man. And I just checked the obituaries. I was wondering where Tony was. Tony passed away last year, one of my guys, billionaire guys. And there were about 82 gazillion people at his funeral. If he continued his giveaway program that when I knew him, every one of those guys got a check. I mean, every single one of them. What else about the pig fucker, if anything? And, he actually looks kind of like that. It's easy peasy. Intellectually, our daughter went through the seminar when she was 12 the first time. She's 36 now. Yeah, 36. Easy peasy, Daddy. He said, but you got to follow the steps. I mean, from the babe's mouth. Yes, honey, that's correct. It's easy peasy. Intellectually, there's nothing hard about this. Nothing. In fact, in some cases, it lures you into a false sense of security when you read the book. Okay, nothing else about the pig fucker. Yes, sir.
You got the right attitude.
Oh, absolutely, he's got the right attitude. Failure's not an option. When he was a runner for the IRA, failure wasn't an option. You got caught, you got in big trouble. Whereas my wife would say, big trouble. Most people have the will to win. Few have the will to prepare to win. And that's what this is all about. Now, when you leave here, the people that succeed the most, one, those that get laser beam focused first and stay laser beam focused the longest, that immerse themselves in QLA. And you're going to hear some guys talk today and tomorrow and the next day. They start their day off by listening to me. They've gotten rid of all the other apps and shit on their phone. And they listen to me whenever there's a break, when they go to the gym or whatever, when they take the train, when they're in their plane or traveling. And it's always some bit of QLA with my voice. My default is QLA. I don't have a default. My default is this. Because I think it, breathe it, sleep it, 24/7, 365. And that's why, as I pointed out, not because I enjoyed making my rest of my family suffer during Christmas with me not participating, because I was always working, except for when we went to dinner. I should have been working when we went to dinner. But Sally says, you can't bring these people from all over the world, Dan, and sit here in the big house and they go in and out and see you working. You got to spend some time with them. How little? And Sally's my Rasputin. She's my conscience. She says, well, you got to go to dinner with them. And I went on one tour. But this is my life. I'm chairman of, 22 or 23 companies, down from about 30. We've exited a number in the last couple of years. But this is all I do. I don't do anything else. I don't do anything else. This is eat, sleep, fuck, QLA. That's it. And Sally might tell you, I doubt if she would. And we're short on the fucking in recent years and long on the QLA. But I don't do anything else. Nothing else. I have 3 toll-free cell phones. Asian, UK, USA, American. I've had the same numbers on those cell phones for the USA number at least 30 years. I told you how the AT&T fucked me and upsold me when my phone didn't work anymore. But the same number in Asia and the same number in UK. I got those phones for when my kids could call me and know that they had a direct line to me with no charges on their phone. I've said this 1,000 times. I've had not one call on either of the 3 phones in the 25 to 35 years that I've had them. Not one call from one child. Because my kids know that you have to have an agenda when you talk to Daddy. You have to clear that agenda with one of his assistants. Some of the assistants are easier, like Kim, who's known them forever. Some of my assistants aren't so easy. Well, I don't think your dad's going to want to talk about that. Zero calls on those 3 phones. Because my structured way of parenting, rightly or wrongly, I may be wrong, but don't confuse me with the facts, has produced, some pretty outstanding results. And then I'd ask you how your kids turned out. I already know. When I asked you, what is the highest performance thing you did, blah, 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 and your kids did. A lot of you beg off and say, they're too young, I can't tell. Well, if you can't tell whether your kid's worth a shit by the time he's 4 or 5 or 6, then you're in denial. You know whether the kid's worth a shit or not. Self-esteem is built the first 7 or 8 years. So you already know. You're copying to, they're not old enough to know. Or you're not old enough to ascertain whether they're worth a shit or not. Just by that answer, I already know they're not worth a shit. If your kids think you're successful, something's wrong. Little minds are tamed and subdued by misfortune, but great minds rise above it. This program will show you, if you follow the steps, and the steps are applicable whether you're trying to do a deal, you're trying to figure out if E equals MC squared, or whether, it works in all aspects of your life. But it's whether you use it or not. Okay, YouTube. Goodbye.